And let me go ahead and show you an example of what we would do when we have a parabola that does have an a value, that does have something other than the number 1 as its a value. We're going to go ahead and look at our second example then. Again, we're going to start by looking at if we are given the vertex. It looks like we aren't given the vertex again for this one, which means it's not an integer point. It's maybe like a decimal or, a fraction or something like that. And so we're again going to start with the factored form or the x-intercepts. So looking at this one, it looks like our x-intercepts are located at 0, 0 and -6, 0. So I'm going to write that as x equals 0 as the first one, and x equals -6. Both of those are our roots for this problem, for this parabola. I'm again going to reverse the zero product property process, and I'm going to write y, and so let's see, x minus 0, which is just x, so I don't really need to write it. And then x minus -6, well, a negative will turn into a positive, and there we go. We have our factored form of this parabola. Now again, we're going to add that a value in front of whatever we have as the very first part of our parabola. And again, I'm going to pretend like I have an equal sign here. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to choose another integer point. I can't use 0, 0, nor can I use -6, 0, but maybe I'll choose, looks like -2, right here, this guy, looks like -2, -4. You could use any of the other points. If you'd rather use 2, 8, or let's see, -8, 8, or, I mean, you get it. The possibilities are like quite endless. So here we go. -2, -4 is what I'm going to use. If you want to pause the video and use a different point, you go for it. Alrighty, I'm going to plug in this one for my x and this one for my y. So let's see, I'm going to now have the equation -4 equals a times -2 times -2 plus 6. Again, I plugged in that x value of -2 into both of the spots where I have an x in my equation. Now I have -4 equals a times -2 times +4, which is going to get me -8 times a on the right-hand side is equal to still -4. I'm going to divide by -8 in order to get my a value all by itself. Negative divided by negative is a positive. 4 divided by 8 is going to simplify to 1/2. So I have an a value of 1/2. This really doesn't affect much other than the fact that I'm going to need to plug in 1/2 instead of a in order to have a correct final equation here. So I'm going to have y, and now I'm going to have a 1/2. Going back to the original equation, again I substitute a for 1/2. So 1/2 x, parentheses, x plus 6. Okay, now I need to figure out my actual symbol that I need to use here. I look over here and I ask, is it dashed or is it solid? It's solid, so I know that I'm going to use half of the equal sign. And then my other component, above or below. This one is obviously very clearly above, which means y is going to be greater than. And so therefore, that would be my final answer for this inequality that is also a parabola. We plug in our values to find that a, and then we can keep it in factored form, unless of course it tells us otherwise, in which case we would need to distribute the 1/2 x times both things inside. And so another possible answer, in case it asked for standard form for our final answer, would be 1/2 x squared, because again I'm going to use that distributive property. 1/2 times 6 is a +3, and there's an x attached. So either one of these is a perfectly acceptable answer. It really just depends on which form it has allowed us to put our answer into, factored form or standard form.